Hi and welcome back to the workshop. This is the second video in a mini-series on quick and simple projects to get you back in the workshop. Quick and simple, but productive and fulfilling. In this video, I'm going to make this magnetic knife stand. In the first video, I did a simple set of shelves, Japanese architecture inspired shelves, would you believe? So the design of the knife block is really simple, or knife stand, I should say. There's a single beveled cut to set the angle, and then the off cut becomes the back. Clever, eh? Bit of work with the router to put the bevels on. We've got some plugs to cut to cover up the magnets so that it takes the knives nicely. And then a bit of sanding and a bit of finish. I'll put a timestamp link below in the description so that if you don't need to or don't want to watch the material prep, then you can skip straight ahead. So let's get to it. So the most popular size of chef knife, at least here in the UK that I'm aware of, is 8-inch. So I've made the block 10-inch, just in case there are a few longer knives around. And I'm going to increase that to 12, approximately 300mm. And I'm going to allow 100mm for the back. So I start off with a piece of rough sawn timber at 400mm long. And I've got 200 to 220mm wide so that it's nice and comfy to place 3 knives on the top. So this particular block will take 3 goodly sized chef's knives. That's enough for anyone in a kitchen, isn't it? So here I've got 2 pieces of oak, and I think for mine I'd like to make an oak knife block but with a couple of strips of maple in it. So I'm going to So I'm going to plane these 2 pieces of oak up and a piece of maple. It really doesn't matter what timber you use. You can use anything you want. You can even go with a softwood if you want to. But oak is nice, and oak and maple is a bit of a timeless classic, I think. So that's my 3 pieces now planed and squared on 3 sides. So my next job is to cut them down to size on the table saw. I want my finished block to be 25mm thick so I can claim solid inch thick knife block. Sounds good. So I'm going to set my fence to 27mm, give myself a couple of mil to clean up after the glue up. That's all my pieces cut down, but as you can probably see, it's too wide. So I'm up to 234mm. So I'm going to reduce the size of the 2 maple strips. They're currently about 32, so I'm going to drop them down to 20 and make them look a little more delicate. There, I think that looks a little better. And we're now down to a shade under 210mm wide, which is about ideal. So, time for some glue. And I'm also going to be trying out these new clamps. More on them in a future vid. How cruel. Well, while that's drying, as it's 3 o'clock, I think it's time for a spot of tiffin. Well, if you skip forward to this bit, then you've missed one hell of a party. We've been whooping it up with Shakin' Stevens around the planer. Really, go back and check it out. Awesome. So I've now got my board and my cat. The first thing I'm going to do is get the majority of the sanding out the way. So I'm going to go 80, 120 and then 180 so that all of the sanding work's done before I start putting my bevels and my angles on. So that's all my sanding work done. And no, I haven't bleached Hoskins. This is Benson, his brother. And I've done it that way so that the majority of the sanding base work is all complete. And I've only got last fine sanding to do once I've got the bevels on and I've got the angles cut. Because I don't want to smudge those nice crisp lines. So my next job is 90-degree cut at the end, and then I can set the table saw up for the 30-degree angle cut. So I'm setting the angle of my blade to 70 degrees. Or 20 from the 90, whichever way you want to look at it. The angle is far from critical. You don't need to worry yourself about getting it exact unless you suffer from OCD. So with my blade angle set, I'm going to take the nice square edge that I've just cut on the miter saw and measure in 10 inches. This again does not have to be exact. Excuse me, but I want 10 inches at about middle of the angle, top of the angle, bottom of the angle. As long as we got more than 8, we're quids in. I've just set my stop and I'm good to go. While you've got the angle on your blade set, grab a couple of scraps of wood, 2x2, 30x30, whatever you can lay your hands on, and just cut 2 pieces at about 10 inches again, ready for the glue up, and I'll show you what we do with these later. So now that we've got our angle cut, we can cut the holes for the magnets, making sure that the point of the angle's facing down. So we'll cut it on the back. Remember that it's going to sit that way. So I'm going to put 3 magnets in. So if I divide by 4, I'm looking at 51 mil, 102 mil, 51 mil, and I'm going to sight them. So I've got inch magnets, so I'm going to come down 30 mil, so that I've got a nice bit of timber at the top here outside the magnet. So that'll be nice and strong, but it still keeps the magnet relatively close to the top, so we can catch fattest part of the knife blade. So setup on the drill press is quite important. We want to get the magnet that we're going to place inside the block as close to the face as possible, but with the Forstner pits we've got this center guiding pin, so that's the bit we've got to make sure it doesn't puncture the front. Now I've set mine using this 2mm packer to 2mm from the face, so with the length of that center bit, that's going to leave my magnet about 5mm back from the face of the timber, which is fine if you've got a strong enough magnet. So my next job is to cut the baseboard so that I can use the wastage to cut the plugs for the holes that I've just cut. So I've measured back from the point 100 mil, give or take. Again, it's not exact. Okay, so we're about ready to glue the plugs in, obviously after I've popped the magnets in. Just a word of caution on the magnets. Be really careful if you decide to do this. These are 11 kilogram force magnets, I believe, 11 or 12, link will be below. They're strong as hell, and they need to be to pull through the wood. If you slip with one of them and they smash together, they are quite likely to shatter, and you really don't want bits of magnet flying in it everywhere. So slide them apart nice and gently and do one at a time. Doesn't matter which way up they go, north or south pole. Let's get them over there out the way. And then I'm going to put a little bit of foam on top of the magnet so that when I bang my plug in, it'll trap it down nice and tight, and I don't have to worry about trying to seat the plug all the way down. And just before I attempt to get the plug into the hole, I'm just going to take the edge off so it'll go in nice and easy. That's good. If you can't hear it shake, you got it there. Sorted. So when my plug's now nice and flat, my next job is to put a couple of dowels, or in my case dominoes, in the joint just to give it an extra bit of strength. I'm not really sure this stage is required. I think you could consider it optional because there isn't a lot of pressure going to be on a joint in this use case scenario. If you want to see detail on how to set the domino up to get the center, then I've covered that off in my video on making some Japanese inspired shelves. Worth a watch. So last job before glue up then is to route the bevels on all of the external corners, and I mean all of the external corners, in order to get the look that I want. I'm going to bevel all around the top, down the sides of the upright, all the way around the back. In fact, there's only 3 surfaces that I'm not going to put a bevel on, and that's the leading edge, the joint between the 2 boards, 4 surfaces, sorry, and that piece at the back. Everything else gets a bevel. Just one bit to be careful of is that if you've got a bevel bit in your router with a very small bearing, or even worse, a guide pin on the bottom, just be careful when you come to this front angle that the guide pin doesn't slip off, and therefore you end up taking a gouge out the corner, because you just have to cut the angle on it again. So to the glue up, but before we do, the reason we cut these bits of 2x2 or 30x30 or whatever you had your hand on, you want these two and a bit of scrap MDF or ply that's just slightly narrower than the width of the knife block, and you want to just screw these angle pieces with the faces, point of them level with the edge of the MDF, and it will help glue up immensely. Because of the angle, with this little contraption we can clamp from the front to the back of the board, so from there into there, and these 2 bits will keep it nice and tight. And if needs be, we can also clamp down against the board to keep those bottom 2 edges nice and flush. Cool tip. One other thing, have a piece of kitchen roll, pop it underneath the bottom so that any squeeze out glue goes onto the kitchen roll, which will tear when you come to take it out, as opposed to the wood fibres. And finally, a spot of finish. And as we've got knives touching it, I'm going to go with pure mineral oil. Same stuff I'd use on a chopping board. It brings out the grain beautifully. And that's all there is to it. Pretty damn quick and simple, but nice and effective. And a wonderful addition to anybody's kitchen. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Ta-ra.